Well, greetings to you. Many years ago, Jacob Rothschild said that it doesn't matter who you vote for, he who controls the money controls the power. And obviously going back, I think, to Victorian times, but that's neither here nor there, because that's still partially true today, but we've moved on since then. And I made this point many years ago in a short lecture I gave at Cambridge University, 30 years ago probably. And I made the point that we live in a world these days where it doesn't so much matter who you vote for, it's a question of putting your ideology at the levers of power, if you will. So you have to infiltrate all our institutions with people who are like-minded. Left and right wing is a bit simplistic these days, although of course most people who have infiltrated our institutions, of course, are left wing by definition. And it gets worse because under the Blair administration, of course, we saw there was a great drive to send people to universities. Any old university will do. Everybody goes to university these days. Mickey Mouse universities, as well as the Oxbridge group, which partially, of course, Oxbridge these days is Mickey Mouse as well. But leaving that aside, we have a problem because they all, therefore, end up with groupthink. And so it's very difficult to shift it. And this piece, there's a link I've done to a piece that was identified this by Andrew Walker, and it's worth having a look at. He is right up to a point, but only to a certain point, because what he was actually saying is, if reform come in with Nigel Farage in charge, just what kind of reforms can he make? And of course, Liz Truss said the same thing. You come in and you want to reform, you want to do things, but you can't fight the blob because they have the levers of power. So the educational system is part of that. Civil service is a big part of that. And the press, of course, are part of that, and so it goes on. Now, as you know, I don't often speak with any form of notes, but I didn't want to miss anything out. So I just sort of give you some of these examples. And I do welcome, as always, and I thank you for them, your comments that you said. I do read them all. And I'm particularly interested in hearing your comments on this particular one. It's not in any order of priority, but I've mentioned civil service, and I've mentioned the university, where World Economic Forum and woke groupthink hold sway. We have now just an interesting one popped up only this morning. Railways. Railways are going to they're going to have a Trans Week or something, which is quite interesting because I live in an area where we have the Trans-Pennine Express that goes through and goes across our land, in point of fact. It was really quite funny. So trans takes on a whole new meaning. And though some of the carriages have been sprayed with the rainbow colours, and there was one train, I think I actually flagged it up, which was going to be staffed entirely by LBGT, PTO, POQ and all the rest of the bullshit that we have to put up with. And I thought, well, you know, I just want a train that runs on time, that is clean and comfortable, served by nice people. And of course, to a very large extent, we have that on things like an LNER, and they stabbed that poor chap in the back who actually said, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen." And somebody complained, some trans, I think it was, or who it was, complained, and his own management stabbed him in the back. Where were the trade unions? Nowhere to be seen, because they've all been infiltrated by wokery as well. So there's no standing up for the ordinary working class bloke who works on the trains. And I gather this LBGTGBPPTOQ thing going forward is going to cost about some of the region of £65,000. Not a particularly large sum, admittedly, but I mean, wouldn't you see that go into the trains, into the rolling stock, and so on and so forth? Wouldn't you see it go to a better place? We have channel. I'm very partial to moving pictures. I think it's channel 81. And the channel yesterday on TV. I watch a few of those things by and by because they have some very interesting programs. But I watched one the other day. It was on channel 81, which always comes up with saying, this one was speech. This film contains speech which is outdated, speech which may be outdated and might give offence. Have you ever heard anything quite so stupid? Speech which is outdated. What happens to Shakespeare, which is pretty bloody outdated, or the Restoration comedies, which is pretty outdated, and so it goes on. Speech becomes outdated after a while, of course it does, or I'd say outdated, it becomes out of fashion. But it isn't something to take offence at or burst into tears about, is it? Which everybody seems to be taking offence all these days. And there was one old film, 1950s or something like that, perfectly inoffensive, and it was filmed at Glasgow University. I can't remember what the title was. But again, we were warned that there might be some old-fashioned ideas which might give offence. It consisted of one of the actors, as part of the student celebrations, had burnt cork on his face because he was playing an African or something. It was all part of the fun and games and part of the plot. I don't take offence at that, and I wouldn't know anybody who has. I've got lots and lots of friends with African backgrounds, so on and so forth, who wouldn't dream of taking offence at that. They think it's absurd and patronising. But some idiot types these things in. And it makes me very cross, and it makes everybody very cross, I'm quite sure. But then we saw there was a programme which was too dreadful a few years ago to even mention, really. Bridgerton, which is it was a series where everybody in the film, in the clips, in the episode was black. Everybody was black. The Duke of Portsmouth, the Duke of this, the Duke of that, Sir John Snooksy Poos, and all the rest of it. It was set in the late Victorian era, I seem to think, and it doesn't matter anyway. But they were all black. Well, that's cultural appropriation, I would have thought, which should have carried a warning, shouldn't it? But of course it didn't, because being black's okay. Being white is a really serious problem, and we all have to apologise. I'm really sorry I'm white. Well, I'm not really, no. So all this sort of thing goes on and on and on. You've got to think about Othello, Sir Laurence Olivier, burnt cork. Does anybody take offence at his portrayal of Othello? Porgy and Bess. Well, of course, quite right. And the beautiful voices of Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. Those wonderful voices from black people, supposedly from the plantation, so on and so forth. But you will know the story, and the music's absolutely wonderful. Of course, all the libretto and all the tunes were written by a Jew. Was that cultural appropriation? I mean, I don't know. Perhaps it is. So the whole thing is absolutely ridiculous, and we've got to stop it. And it's very difficult to stop. As Liz Truss said, she said she's trying to get through a different type of approach, trying to get through lower taxes and so on, less government spending, so on, all these kind of things. And of course, who broke her but the Treasury and their friends in the international banks? Getting back to Rothschild, he who controls the money actually controls the politics of the whole thing. So it's very difficult to change her. So Andrew Walker, and have a look at the piece and see what you think. It might be impossible for Raw when they come in, because the BBC, for example, their charter is being renewed within the term of this government. It's being reviewed within the term of the Conservative Party kick the can down the road, because what government doesn't want a mouthpiece? And as we know, of course, the BBC is simply a mouthpiece for government. And we've seen that time and time again. And we know that it's unreformable, because even when they've been caught flagrantly doctoring, cutting and pasting a speech by the American president, Donald Trump, they've been caught out on that. People have resigned, but they're still only talking about an error. The BBC spokesman and supporters are still talking about, it's an error. It isn't an error, is it? It's consistent fake news. It's consistent spin. And they've been caught out in the most blatant way on this particular. And we're saying, we can't pay Trump. They're now saying we can't pay Trump billions and billions of dollars for the simple reason it's public money. It's subscribers' money. Well, it shouldn't be, should it? What on earth is this anachronism all about? The BBC will have to go to the devil in its own way, and I hope to hell it's sued out of existence. It's a bloody disgrace, and it has been for years and years and years. It's a cesspit of left-wing and wokery and WF ideas. It's positively ghastly. And of course, they're now beginning to find out, people are waking up, aren't they? And they're going to be stopping contributing, because the whole thing's are nonsense. Very difficult to get rid of, because government want a mouthpiece to try and persuade people that the Russians are bad, or they've got to have a jab because we're all going to die of COVID or whatever it is. They need this mouthpiece, and there are still enough people in this country who believe that they're getting unbiased advice from the BBC. Yes, there are. I know my subscribers say, well, I don't take any notice, but a lot of people do. Yes, I know a lot of people are stupid, but you have to factor that into the equation, don't you? If there are lots of stupid people, you have to make sure that you take out the problem of manipulating. We shouldn't be manipulating people just because they're naive. And so it goes on. And so it goes on. And it's the armed forces have been infiltrated. And I've said this before, you cannot get above the rank of Lieutenant Colonel without political approval. Incidentally, quite recently, that's almost starting to break down because Starmer is so bad. Some senior generals even risking their pension for it. But until we understand what the problem is, we've got to know it's got to be a lot deeper than just voting reform. Reform have got to get their act together and work out exactly how they're going to reform anything, because at the moment I can't see it. I'm not just having a pop. I don't see what they're going to do. I want to see written down in their manifesto, what are they going to do, as Ashridge management course used to say, after a training session. Okay, we've had the training session. You've had this clip, for example. What are reform going to do to reform these institutions which have been heavily infiltrated, like the National Health, like the National Trust? They're very difficult to reform. And there are ways of doing it. Let me suggest just one or two to you so I can be constructive in this clip. Wouldn't it be a good idea? They all have charitable status, these organisations, or in some form. So wouldn't it be a good idea to start the reform? Let's take the National Trust, which is another cesspit of wokery, to say something on the lines of charities may not spend more than XYZ on senior management salaries. That could be one thing. There could be other things they could do, and say your voting system must not hold a proxy system, a proxy vote system. So they can't write to everybody and saying, here's the vote, don't worry, if you don't post it or you just click the coupon at the bottom, we'll vote for you on your behalf. That should be illegal. And that's what's happening at the National Health. You can't get rid of these disgustingly ghastly people at the head of the National Trust because nobody actually makes an effort and they send it back. They ought to have to sit down and make a decision, look at the list. They don't have to vote. I'm not suggesting you've got to vote in these things. What I'm suggesting is don't make it easy for the creeps in charge of all these organisations to feather their own nests or put their own ideological point of view forward. I mean, comic relief. And I did I put a clip out on X, I think, on this, and lots of people have been picking up on it. Charities for children. Why is the dude in charge of that getting £150,000 a year? And people say, oh, some stupid people say, oh, you've got to pay that kind of money to get the kind of people. They're not the best kind of people. They're journeymen, failed Liberal Democrat MPs, and all sorts of riffraff at the top of these organisations. And I can tell you, we've got an honours system for that. If you are a CEO of an organisation, as I was, I can say, I would like to do public service now. I've been in the city, I've been a CEO, I've got the money I need or the pension I need. I'd like to do pro bono publico work. And I'd do that for free. You know, I wouldn't need £150,000 a year, neither would any ex-CEO, in order to run a children's charity. And it would be run very well, very efficiently for no money. And if you like that kind of thing, I think it's ridiculous. But if you want a CBE or a knighthood, that's on the end of it. That's your payback. And your wife will be very happy being referred to as Lady Snooks. There's lots of things you can do for reform, but I want to see them spelled out. So if anybody representing reform or thinking about voting for reform, you do it for me. Get in touch and say, what is it you're going to do? Because at the moment, it's all a bit vague. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.